This video will explain how to do the assignment that you'll be doing day 4 with the sub, and it should make it very clear so that you're able to do it effectively. The assignment is essentially you're going to be graphing the results of what's from several patients from what's called a glucose tolerance test. This is a test that will determine if a person has hypoglycemia or possibly diabetes. And so what they do in this test is, as it says in the directions, they give the person 100 grams of glucose dissolved in water, and this kind of test is done in a hospital, obviously. And then they monitor their blood sugar initially, and then over time periods, and see how their blood sugar changes, and see if it falls in the normal range or not. For graphing, essentially the graph that you're going to make is going to start off with this. You're going to have time, and we always put time, of course, on the x-axis. You're going to put time on the x-axis from 0 to 6 hours. And you've got your normal minimum and normal maximum. And you're going to graph these as two green lines on a graph, sort of like the one that I've drawn over here, but obviously much nicer with the labels and all that. But what you'll be doing is you'll graph the normal minimum will be the lower line, and then the normal maximum you'll graph as another line. And then you're going to shade in all of that region in green, as the directions say, because that is now essentially your normal range. But the one tricky part to this assignment is this. When you're graphing, when you're making your graph initially, you have to actually look at this data on the back of the page, because you have to, of course, make sure that on your graph you capture all of your data. And so the tricky part is the normal maximum, I forget what the number was, but it was lower than some of these values, right? So for example, if you look at what's the highest number over here that I have to graph, the highest number appears to me to be 300. So you've got to make sure that on your graph, when you set it up, that you can get all the way up to 300 and capture all that data. So the tricky part with this, and it's not that tricky, but the thing with making a graph is you got to make sure that you set up your axes correctly, that you've got the same interval, so it's like a ruler on both. Okay, and then you capture all your data. Then you'll go through and use that normal data, right, to make your two, minimum and maximum, fill it in. And then what you'll do is you'll go in and you will graph more lines. Let's say for patient A, you're going to make it a blue line. So maybe patient A, I'm not even looking at the data, but let's say he's way up here, right? Okay, well, obviously he's outside of the normal range. And maybe for patient B, we'll use a red line, and patient B happens to fall in there. I'll go, oh, that's a normal patient, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to have ultimately a graph with the normal range that you did from the first page and the 4 different color lines from patient A, B, and C. And of course, you'll have a key on your graph that says, the blue line indicates patient A, red line indicates patient B, and so forth. And you will then be able to determine some results. You'll be able to describe their lines. You'll be able to talk about how they're similar and different. And you'll be able to identify if any of your patients here have hypoglycemia, diabetes, or is healthy, or severe diabetes. So that's essentially what you're going to be doing in the assignment today. And I hope you have a nice weekend, and I'll see you next week.